Okay, welcome committee. We have a quorum and we've got a little bit of work to do. Our time is 12:30 or 1:30 when we have to be out of here again. So we're going to continue on. The first item on the agenda is there any requests for bills? Bill introduction? Yes. Senator Ware?
Yes, I have a bill to introduce. The RS number is 2018.
Could you give us a little bit of description?
Has to do with reapportionment and reapportionment plans.
Okay. Any discussion? Any questions? Seeing no questions, we will go ahead and introduce that bill. Thank you. Are there any other bills? Seeing none, thank you very much. First bill we have is House Bill 2408. And Jason, could you give us a short briefing on this one? Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, House Bill 2408 proposes to convey land held by the State Historical Society to the Iowa tribe of Kansas and Nebraska. Conveyances of state-owned property must be done generally by statute, and so you have the proposed statute here to convey this property, which is 9.86 acres, more or less. You have the legal description. This would be by quitclaim deed, and the deed and all conveyance documents must be reviewed and approved by the Attorney General before they can be executed by the Executive Director of the State Historical Society. There is also an agreement that the tribe will grant the state a historic preservation easement that reflects current federal preservation laws regarding properties that are listed on the National Register of Historic Places. The bill will go into effect on July 1st, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? Yes, Senator Fausto.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jason, so what is the piece in here that talks about the expenditures for maintenance, and then it gives two different dollar amounts? Can you elaborate?
I'm not sure what you're referring to in terms of dollar amounts.
Well, so here at the bottom of the information here, isn't this for House Bill 2404?
No, this is 2408.
Okay, 2408 is what I'm looking at. So at the bottom of it, it says the Kansas Historical Society estimates transferring at the bottom of the fiscal note.
Okay.
So it has maintenance of property by $5,745, of which $1,200 is from the state general fund. Can you just?
Well, that is, so currently the Kansas Historical Society is charged with maintenance of the property. That annual maintenance expenditure is $5,745. Of that amount, the State Historical Society uses $1,200 from state general fund resources to cover that cost. The remaining balance comes out of other revenue sources for the State Historical Society. That amount would no longer be necessary to be maintained once the property is transferred to the Iowa tribe of Kansas and Nebraska.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you, Jason, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? Thank you, Jason. First proponent today would be Representative John Epley. Welcome, Representative Epley.
Thank you again, Chairman Alley and members of the Senate Fed and State Committee. I really appreciate this opportunity to appear before you today in support of House Bill 2408. I will remind you that this bill passed out of the House Fed and State unanimously and passed through the House 124-0 earlier, actually in March. So this is an opportunity that came to me in December of last year when I was approached by a joint email from the Historical Society and the Iowa Tribe of Kansas and Nebraska. I'd never even heard of this building, and then when I actually got to tour it, I was just amazed by the quality of the construction. If it's not the oldest building in the state of Kansas, it's darn close. It was built in 1845. 1/3 of the building remains. The other two have been appropriated over time for buildings in Highland, Kansas. Some of those bricks have been taken off site. But the building is amazing. The property is amazing. This property has always serviced the indigenous peoples of the state of Kansas, and it always has acted as either an assimilation center, a hospital, an orphanage, a school, and more recently a museum. In the 1940s, the property was actually ceded to the state of Kansas, and the Kansas State Historical Society has pretty much taken care of the property until the current time. It actually was a functioning museum either by the tribe or by the Kansas State Historical Society through 2008, and then during the economic downturn, the museum closed and it was put in mothballs. The Historical Society, to their credit, has maintained it in excellent condition. It's in pristine condition. If it does not get utilized, it's going to continue to decay and decline, and we're hoping that we can get this transferred and conveyed. The elephant in the room is the concern about it becoming an Indian gaming casino. There are 3 padlocks to assure that that's not going to happen, and that is the Bureau of Indian Affairs language, which one of my other proponents can address, and it talks about that this is a level 2 conveyance. Because it's off-site, it has to honor the Department of Interior's language, which says it has to be for state historical purposes only. The second padlock is the easement language, which I have and I can share with you. I don't want to take time today to go into it, but again, it references the Department of Interior language as it relates to the State Historical Society's request that this remain only for historical purposes only and traditional purposes. And the third issue is what we just went through. Just as we had our hearing, we got word from the Attorney General's office that they had reviewed this at the request of my representative leadership. They had reviewed this and they said by making the amendments that occurred in this bill with the quitclaim word and taking without consideration out of the bill, that they are totally comfortable oversighting this and making sure that it will not become a gaming casino going forward. And trust me, the Iowa tribe, which is an awesome tribe in northeast Kansas, you probably don't know many of the members, you'll get to meet one today. They already have a gaming casino. They have no desire to have another gaming casino in their reservation area. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to other members to give you more proponent testimony. I just want to say in closing that this property is a tribute to the Native American people's spirit and enduring perseverance. It's time to convey this property back to its rightful owners. And with that, I'll certainly be around for questions if needed, and I'm happy to turn this over to other proponents. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll hold questions till all the proponents. Thank you. Mr. Lance Foster, Vice Chairman of Tribal Historic Preservation Office of the Iowa Tribe. Welcome.
Thank you. Chairman Ali and committee members, I'm a proponent of the bill. This mission, when our reservation was established in 1837 as a result of the 1836 treaty, it was part of our reservation. Our reservation was within that land, and it was used as part of a way to help us learn the American ways, the ways of you're going to have to learn to be that way. In fact, what was kind of cool about it, different than boarding schools, is that it actually used our language as part of the teaching medium. So it didn't take our language away from us, it actually recorded it for us. So it's a positive thing for us that way. And then the students that were there, a lot of them went on to become leaders. And unfortunately, it was 1854 when the Kansas-Nebraska Act shrunk the reservation, and therefore it was no longer on the reservation. And we moved further up by the Nemaha. And from that point on, it was an industrial home for orphanages for a little bit, and then it just basically was empty. And then in the 1930s, like Representative Epley said, it became a museum, and it has been a museum. It's a little quiet place out in the middle of kind of nowhere, out in the middle of a cornfield almost, but it's a beautiful building, and it has a lot of memories and sacred value for us because there were weddings there. There was students buried there. There's part of the historic trail, the California-Oregon Trail. So it has a lot of spiritual meaning and significance to us there. But why would we want to do this? Because the community members, not just tribal members, but people in Highland and people in Northeast Kansas are always saying, when are they going to open it up? It's been closed for 12 years. And the funding isn't there for people to do that. So we said, let's go ahead and go ahead and look at doing this, because we have now Iowa Tribal National Park, which we can tell our story across different sites on the landscape about how we were here, and not only us, but also Highland, how it formed, how the land was as we found it, Buffalo and everything. So it's a way to help connect with Highland College, Highland community, bring the economic benefit to all the people there in the community in Northeast Kansas. A little forgotten spot, I know, in the corner of Kansas, but 1845, it was before Kansas even came to be. That's, if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer it.
Thank you very much for being here today. We'll hold for questions in just a moment, but thank you. Next proponent is Cindy Davis, Director of the Library at Highland College, on remote. And Cindy, are you there? Cindy?
I'm mute. I'm muted. Am I still muted?
We can hear you now.
Good. I don't know what was happening. I'm sorry. Yes, I met Lance about, I guess, almost 3 years ago when I found one of the documents that it was a land grant from 1854, which ceded the land to the Highland Community College and to the town of Highland. That time it was going to be Highland University. And we were talking, and I had found also the pamphlet about the museum that was created back in, I think, 1942. And he has always expressed the interest of the tribe in reestablishing the mission as a museum. And it really excites me because I know how much a museum is an added value to an area in pulling people in, as well as sharing what the history of that area. Also, we've talked a lot about sharing educational. The Iowa tribe is doing a lot with agriculture and livestock and that would be beneficial to the students, some of the students that we have coming here in our agricultural programs, and also more about diversity and those things. Also, the college has not been in a position to maintain the mission themselves, but we are fully behind working with the tribe and keeping the mission open and possibly doing work together in the future with our students and with their, to create another line of diversity and making sure our history is preserved for the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll hold for questions for Cindy in just a moment. The next we have is Ted Collins from Highland, Kansas. Ted, are you on the line?
I am, thank you. I'm a proponent of the bill. I'm a lifelong resident of the Highland community. I've got a lot of personal connections with the old mission. Without going into any great detail, the city of Highland College, the entire community has a direct connection to the mission, to Dr. Irvin was one of the founders of both the city and the college. And we think that the tribe's acquisition and use of this building is probably the best possible outcome for it. It is a good structure. It has significant, even though people aren't aware of it, it has significant historical value to the state and to the tribe. And we believe that it can be both a cultural and an economic benefit to the entire community. So we're a strong proponent of the bill.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for any of the proponents? Senator Faust-Godot.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lance Foster. So the building, from your pictures and your testimony, looks pretty good inside. So do you have items already to go inside to reopen? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We have a good connection with Northeast Kansas Historical Society. We know there are some items that are in storage at the Kansas Historical Society. We might work with them in that regard. We'll tell the story on the first there'll be a permanent exhibit to tell the story of the area and the tribe and the mission itself. The second will be more like events as far as new kinds of, like Smithsonian has traveling exhibits, things that would bring in. And the third floor would be more dedicated to a classroom and meeting space to work with Highland College.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you very much. We do have written only by three, Sarah Lawson, Matthew Chappell, and Representative Ponkawi Victors. So make sure you take a look at that. Is there any other discussion on this issue? If not, we're ready for final action on this bill. And yes, Senator. Yes, Senator. Close the hearing. We will close the hearing, and now we're going to ready for final action. Excuse me. Yes, Senator Hildebrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I make a motion that we pass out House Bill 2408 favorably for passage.
We have a second. Second by Vascadell, Senator Vascadell. Any discussion? All in favor? Say aye. 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 Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much. And we'll do something, see if we can't get this on the floor quickly. Thank you. Okay. Our next item of business would be on House Bill 2058, which is allowing reciprocity for the out-of-state license of gun to carry a concealed handgun. And we had heard that earlier. We had worked that earlier. So what we need now would be a motion to reconsider. And yes, Senator Hildebrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I make a motion that we reconsider our work that we did on House Bill 2058 and bring it back into committee to work.
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Do we have a amendment?
Mr. Chairman, I think I do. Jason, are you with us on the amendment?
Yes, let me bring it up and I can describe it if you'd like me to.
Yes, Jason, we have about 10 minutes. And what we're going to do would be after your, we're handing it out now, and after your briefing on this, we're going to adjourn until 3 o'clock, and we'll consider this again at 3 o'clock.
Very good. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, the balloon that's being distributed to you would amend the provisions of Senate Bill 190. If the committee recalls, prior to moving House Bill 2058 out, the committee took up an amendment to add the provisions of Senate Bill 190 regarding restoration of the right to possess firearms to House Bill 2058. This balloon would amend those provisions of Senate Bill 190 that are already amended into 2058. And so I thought it was simpler for the committee to simply look at the amendments in the context of the underlying Senate Bill 190. The amendments first go into the statute that criminalizes possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. The amendment would restore 4 categories of potential violations. First, if it is a person felony or drug felony and a firearm was used in commission of the crime. Second, if it is a non-specified person felony, no firearm was used and it's less than 3 years since the defendant satisfied their sentence or their diversion agreement, their correctional service, and was released from probation, parole, whatever they had to do to finish out the court-ordered punishment, penal imposition. If that's been satisfied for at least 3 years, then they wouldn't be convicted under this. The third category is one of the specified felonies on page 2 of the balloon. And it's been less than 8 years since they satisfied their penal imposition. And then 4 would be any other non-person felony, and it'd be less than 3 months of satisfying their punishment. Then those individuals could be convicted for possessing a firearm while a convicted felon. There is an exemption still in the bill that there would be no conviction under the statute for those felonies that fall under categories 1, 2, and 4 if the underlying conviction was expunged or pardoned. That takes care of the criminal piece. The other piece of the balloon starts on page 7 with the expungement statute. And in the expungement statute, there's an amendment that if the crime to be expunged is a felony, then the court must also determine that the petitioner is not likely to pose a threat with possession of a firearm in order to grant that expungement. And then if you look on page 9 of the balloon, upon the expungement of a crime that resulted in such person being prohibited by state or federal law from possessing a firearm, then the person's right to possess a firearm is fully restored. As you see, the original language under Senate Bill 190. And those expungements include any expungements that meet that qualification that occurred prior to July 1st of 2021 when this act took effect. So there is a look back period. Not going to force people to go back and re-petition for a new expungement if their expungement already met the qualification under this statute. The next set of amendments appear on page 11. The expunged record cannot be used by the Attorney General in determining eligibility for a concealed carry license under the Personal and Family Protection Act. You can see that amendment there. And then also, with respect to the Kansas Bureau of Investigation, the expunged record is to be maintained by the Kansas Bureau of Investigation, and they are to report that expunged record to the Federal Bureau of Investigation so that the criminal record can be withdrawn from the National Background Check System. And also the KBI is to maintain that record as documentation that the individual has had their record expunged and has had their firearm rights restored pursuant to this statute. That's the basic policy provisions under the balloon. I'd be happy to answer any questions in the time we have left.
Thank you, Jason. We do have a few minutes left. Are there any questions? Yes, Senator Faust-Godell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jason, say what you just said again on page 11. The expungement part. Please say that again. Thank you.
Sure. There are two, there's a provision under the expungement statute that once a record is expunged, the record of that conviction cannot be used generally, but there are exceptions that we can use that expunged record for certain determinations for like, whether or not you're eligible to become a law enforcement officer. Under this balloon, you could not use the expunged record to determine eligibility for a concealed carry license. So the Attorney General would basically treat that conviction as if it never happened in determining whether or not the individual could obtain a concealed carry license. Additionally, the KBI would maintain a record of that expunged conviction, that expungement, and would report to the FBI the expunged record so that that record of that conviction could be withdrawn out of the National Background Check System. So it wouldn't create a red flag if the individual went to purchase a firearm in the future.
Senator Hildebrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just trying to draw some light on this, if you guys remember, this Bill 190 was to allow someone that had an expungement to be able to legally carry a firearm. We passed it out of committee, but once we passed it out of committee, there were some concerns from some law enforcement and some prosecutors that maybe it was a little too vague. So all this amendment does is it clarifies when it can, because we don't want someone that used a gun in a felony to, again, get another gun. And so this clarifies all that language. So if you are a violent criminal that used a gun or potentially used a gun, you still would not be able to get a gun. But this just clarifies that a little bit better.
Any other questions? We are ready to go to caucus, so we're going to be in recess until 3 o'clock, and we'll meet back here at 3 o'clock and finish up our work. Thank you very much. You can? That take this document here and in your